Now, the team from Book.io, or formerly Book Token, are absolutely kicking goals in publishing all of these open domain books at the moment. And it really is refining their process, ensuring that their NFT drops for these books is working efficiently and ironing out all the bugs. I can see why they want to do this first, just to ensure that they're definitely got all their systems and everything's in place working correctly. Now, as we're going through the ecosystem, they're finally to the point where they've gone off to different chains. They're now also minting on Ethereum and Polygon as well, which is expanding that cross-chain ability, interoperability between different chains, and expanding their platform, which is really amazing. They have also just submitted their book reading app on the Android store, and I'm pretty sure we'll see a iOS version very soon too for the Apple devices. So I'm pretty excited about that, and having the reading experience of your NFT book on your device where you spend most amount of your time. Now, the team are also absolutely kicking goals with some of these sales. This here is a new large sale alert of the original Gutenberg Bible. This is book number 000. It's the very first one, selling for 30,000 ADA. Now, some people said that's a little bit cheap, but still, that's a lot of ADA to sell for a first print, their very first NFT release of their book. So it's very cool that these guys are at that point. Now, this interview that I've got coming up is with Wizard Tim, the team from Wizard Tim. I've got Tim Canada joining me on this episode, and we're talking about the very first, or one of the very first published books to be produced and printed on the Cardano blockchain. So we've had all the open domain books such as the Gutenberg Bible, but now we have this one here that was written by someone in the Cardano community wanting to release their book in the ecosystem. Now, they've got a very interesting team. Now, they wrote this book during COVID, but they managed to team up with some very experienced and notable storytellers in the industry to be able to take this book to the next level. Someone that used to work for a certain cartoon in the 90s. I won't ruin the surprise for you. You'll hear it in a moment in this interview. And also met and worked with Vanilla Ice. Cool. Maybe you can put that those two clues together: 90s cartoon and Vanilla Ice. What came out of that? So this is a pretty cool interview, just from the experience of the team and what they're trying to produce. And it's one of the very cool books that I am also holding in the Cardano ecosystem off the Book.io platform. So let's get into this interview.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.
I have Tim and Paul joining me on this episode to talk about a special little project here that caught my attention a little while back. It's called the Wizard Tim. So I'm interested in this one, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about your journey, guys, into the crypto space and how you guys started this project as well. So, guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let's start off a little bit about your background so we know who we're talking to. So, Tim, could you explain how you got into the crypto space and how you found Cardano, and then we'll move over to Paul.
My day job, I am like a software product manager. I deal with tech a decent amount. And so I kind of came into Cardano a few years ago, just kind of following the general crypto space, and really just kind of fell in love with Charles and that whiteboard video. He kind of pulled me in, like many before me, and just kept following it ever since. And I was around as the sort of first NFTs started coming out on Cardano, and I've sort of watched how this place that had nothing, no dApps, just sort of this promise of something really cool and decentralized and exciting, sort of blossom into this amazing landscape with tons of things going on. And throughout that whole period, there was something that I really wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly what. That being said, my best friend, who's unfortunately not here, he just got engaged. He's on a vacation in the UK, but his name is Joe, and he's my other half of this project. And we kind of came up with this really stupid story about this fat, lazy wizard whose key traits are that he's just super apathetic. He never really wants to work very hard. He's just lazy, and he kind of just gets forced to go into all these terrible, unfortunate situations like against his will, that sort of require him exerting physical energy that he doesn't want to do. And we just kind of on and off were writing these stories for a long time, until eventually when COVID hit and we found ourselves at home with a lot of time on our hands, we decided that let's see if we can turn this into something really fun. And around that same time, I was getting really into Cardano, and it kind of like clicked. So we said, we've got this community here that's really building up and embracing new forms of art, new creators, new people in the space that are willing to build. Let's see if we can capitalize on it, and let's push our story together and see if we can mint it as an NFT. And so we kind of pulled it together. We wrote the book. We actually went a step further, and we even produced a full audio book where we went online and we cast like a whole slew of voice actors. And I learned how to audio edit and piece everything together and did all of this stuff. And we kind of ended up with this really cool final product. And then as fate would have it, we also, around the same time, kind of came across this platform, Book.io, they were just launching. And of course, I was like, well, this is right up our alley. We've literally just written a book that we want to publish as an NFT on Cardano. And so I reached out to Ben and Jason and those guys. And I must have been one of the early ones, because they got back to me a lot quicker than what seems like it's taking them now that they've got such a big backlog. But we got super lucky, I think, and we ended up being one of the first sort of independent authors to mint a book on Book.io, which sold out in like 30 minutes or so. And that was an absolutely like unreal experience and super incredible. But so Paul has, throughout that whole process, in particular, sort of the original writing of the book and sort of the creating of the story, kind of acted as this kind of mentor figure to us, to Joe and I, sort of helping us, like giving us positive feedback, understanding how we should go about, our minting strategy, our writing strategy and the story. And now he's going to be kind of working to help us even more. And so he's kind of joined our team to see if we can continue to grow this Wizard Tim community and franchise.
First, before we jump over to Paul, I'd just like to congratulate you for selling out on your collection there. 30 minutes, that's incredible. But, anything that's minting off Book.io at the moment is doing amazingly at the moment. So it's a really cool platform. For those that don't know, they can check out the interview. Top right-hand corner there'll be a link there, and you can check out the interview I did with Josh to learn more about the Book.io platform. So, Paul, let's learn a little bit about yourself and how you're now getting involved with the whole project.
Yeah, so I have a long career working in entertainment. I work across, all media. I'm actually one of the few people that work across all media. I do film, animation, television, comic books, video games. I was the third employee actually of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when it started. I'm the grey beard, right?
Wow.
I went from there, we did it out of a tiny little office in Northampton, Massachusetts. It was the two creators, myself and a couple of other people. The thing blew up. Next thing you know, we're making films and stuff is just exploding, and I'm on the set with like Vanilla Ice on, like making these like huge films. And then,
what a career!
Yeah, crazy. Well, that's it. That's the start of it. So then I went to Marvel when they were in bankruptcy. I was Neil Gaiman's editor. I was Alan Moore's editor over at a company called Tundra Publishing. So I learned an awful lot about comics at the time. And I went over to Marvel. I'd been writing a book called Hellblazer, which is really the precursor to the film Constantine and the TV show. And Marvel asked me if I'd be interested in doing some heroes because they were in bankruptcy. They were actually going out of business. They were very, very close to Chapter 7, and they were in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So I went over there and I wrote a book called The Inhumans, and they won an Eisner Award, and they hadn't won one in like 15 years or something. And they just said, just write everything. So they gave me Spider-Man and a bunch. And
wow.
Actually, I just talked to them the other day. One of the characters I created for them is about to be a big character in an upcoming film. So there's a lot going on, right? And I had done this for a long time. But at the same time, I was really interested in video games, and I was especially interested in cross-media and all-media production, right? I'm really, really highly motivated to do it. So I started innovating in storytelling and story design in video games. And I guess if you were back there in the mid-90s, you would understand that the industry itself thought it couldn't tell stories. And so once you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, that's it, hold my beer. And like, now that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And so I went over and I worked on some very, very big video games. And at that point, I realized I'm kind of like the future of story guy, right? They told us all the things we couldn't do with video games, and it seems absurd now, but one of the things the industry said was you can't tell stories with video games, right? So over time, I've been known as a sort of a guardian of the future, and I got into futurism conventions, and I used to speak a lot of conventions. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was speaking at a lot of them, and had NFTs been around, certainly more in my awareness at that point, I think that's the only thing I would have been talking about. But I really love the underlying technology of this, and I am a futurist. I love the way things will be, and I see the potential for this. So a couple of years ago, I got a phone call from the former head of Disney's Digital Interactive Labs. He's a good friend of mine, Joe Sichter. And he said, "What do you know about NFTs?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And we did a project on Wax back in just as the boom was about to hit. It was called Bitcoin Origins. And that project blew up. With Tim saying he would sell out in 30 minutes, we would sell out in 2 seconds. It was crazy. And what
That's
we
insane.
were doing, we were I kept watching PFPs only, you know, I kept seeing these people go like, "We got Fluffy Frogs #7. I'm like, so what? You know, where's the stuff in there? But what we believe in is that story is a great utility. I mean, telling a story is a utility. We are entertained by story all the time. And that's really where Book.io comes in, you know, is like, so we did this thing. We did this worldwide treasure hunt. You could actually win Bitcoin for following the treasure hunt, trying to solve the puzzles. We did these amazing puzzles. The thing blew up, but you could see the writing on the wall for what was going to happen. And I think that was the problem that we all face, which is here's a bunch of people that are sort of about to go rug pull, and they're doing it right in front of your eyes, and you're watching it happen. And that's frustrating because it's such a great technology. We could do interactive digital storytelling. So Wax was very similar to Cardano, I think. You know, I'm just learning Cardano right now. Wax was a great community. People loved the story stuff. They loved the games. They loved the things. And the community itself was very, very vibrant. And so I happen to know Tim, and we know each other through his mum. But it's not like we just family friends. His mum is really brilliant. And we know each other via I used to chair an advisory committee for the governor of Georgia on digital interactive. So we kind of met that way. So Tim asked me to look at the stuff, and I'm like, listen, sometimes when you've done it for 34 years, like I've done it, you know, I am a graybeard, right? But I'm also an 18-year-old kid at heart. I'm that guy that I like new stuff. And you can see someone and you can see whether they're going to do it or they're not. You can see if they can do it or they can't. And it doesn't take you very long because you've got a lot of experience. And I looked at their stuff and I'm like, they got it. This is it. This is a good book. This is going to be fun. The project's great. They care about the community. They've learned the community, and they're working with the community. So we have like a really cool reciprocal deal, right? I help them with their work. I'm trying to get them a bit of polish, you know, like a little professional polish to get them from newer creators to more seasoned creators.
Yeah.
My company's called Meta Studios, and we predate Zuckerberg by about 6 years. So just so that we're clear. Like, you know, it's frustrating, but Meta is an acronym. It stands for Media, Education, Technology, and Advancement. And we care about education and we care about advancement of creators. So Cardano's our space. It's exactly perfect for us. It's like there's a group of people that they're very vibrantly working together. They care about the same stuff. There's substance, there's utility. And Tim could do me a favor, could get me to understand how to maybe, you know, work with books. So I actually have a book already lined up to come out on Book.io. And there's a bunch of things that I really want to do. I really want this technology to be able to be like interactive. I want to push new methods of storytelling. I would like us to do time travel stories where you could read the beginning of the book and then the book would change. So when you went back to refer to something earlier, it had changed. And because the messing around with the time stream had messed up the book. And if you're clever, you can tell stories like that. I love that kind of idea. I love treasure hunts. And the treasure hunt we did with Bitcoin Origin was amazing. You can get a worldwide community and they can all go working together to go find something in a treasure hunt, and you can change the way that the clues work. You can hide them in artwork. You can do all kinds of stuff. And so Book.io is at present putting out books, but what it's going to do, it should eventually do comics, and it should eventually do interactive books, and it should do books that are driven by the community. So once I finish the first one, which is already written, I actually want to do a book where I'll give elements of it to the audience and have them tell me what they would like in the next chapters. They're not going to decide what the next chapters will do. They'll get a choice of what I might put in the next chapter, and then I'll write it and I'll add that element into it because I believe that we can do that kind of thing. And that's why I think it's such a great community. I think Book.io is exactly my kind of jam. And I'm really grateful to Tim for bringing me into it, you know?
It's I love that level of engagement that you can have with the authors. I remember in one of the interviews we were talking about releasing chapter by chapter, just as what you're doing, and you get that direct feedback. Whereas a regular author would write all the way through and not know what's working and what's not working with the audience until they've written it all.
I mean, when you work on video games as well, you understand a thing, and we talked about this a few times, that you don't really give people a choice. You give them the illusion of choice, and that's just fair. You have to understand that when you think you're choosing something in a video game, you're not really. So let's take a look at something like GTA. Essentially, you can go all the way around the world, you can do stuff, but in the end, it's always going to funnel you to one pivotal place that you have to go to. In other words, you can play the story however you want, but the piece I control is when you go through that door, because that's the bit that moves the story forward. And when you walk through that door, you're going to be facing something. So I control you at that moment. So that's the kind of thing that we can do with a book. We can allow people to have input, but they have to understand they can't tell my story, because what would be the point of me at that point? What would be the point of Tim, right? We can't just write to order. We're not typing monkeys, right? We're trying to create a story, but we're going to give you options of things that I think the audience would really be engaged by, and they can vote and they can suggest, and then we'll go, okay, we'll do that. And then creatively, we can make that stuff happen. So I think it's really cool and exciting to be able to do that.
Oh, I was just going to say on a side note, typing monkeys is my next PFP project.
That's awesome. So what's next for the Wizard Tim project now? So you've had that successful mint. Tim, you've brought on Paul here, obviously, to try and evolve the project to the next level. What is that next level? What is the community going to get out of this?
Great question. So there's a few things we've got going on right now. So one of the things that we're doing is, we're really focused on trying to build up our community. So we've also, in addition to selling the book, we've created this sort of additional short story NFT that we're now also selling for like 36 ADA on our website, wizardtim.com. for people who want to be like more involved in the decision making and growth of the community. And so essentially what it is we wrote a story, and it's a really funny story. It's about the wizard Tim and his companion Julie, and it's basically a tale of how ham became the official dish of the Mini Hands Festival in their town called Half-Ass. It's really stupid and it's really silly and it's funny, but the cool thing about this is it also doubles as a sort of like membership into what we're calling the Pie Congress. So one of Tim's, traits is that he's got this immeasurable love for eating pie. And so when we first started out on this whole process, before we even launched the book, we actually minted 36 hand-drawn pie slice NFTs to like our earliest supporters, like just to see if like, hey, can we get some people to kind of support us, give us a little bit of ADA to help us kind of push along the way and figure out what we need to do. And that took us a while to sell 36 of them. And those people have now since become the sort of like core OG members of our community that like really kind of feed and that we really like respect and admire and care for. And so now we're kind of expanding that to the next level, and we've created 314 seats in the Pie Congress. And the idea is that, we want people to kind of join in our community and want to play an active voice in the decision making of it as it continues to evolve. So like kind of what Paul has been talking about, right, is we're looking at storytelling as a utility. And in particular, thinking about how can we leverage story in this sort of new programmable interactive medium, and what does that look like, right? And I think, for us, there's a ton of ideas that will come to us on a constant and continuous basis, and we can run with it. But some are going to resonate with the community and some aren't. And so we're going to leverage these people, who are holding these NFTs that want to be involved within our space to kind of tell us, like, give us like the feedback that we want to know. We're going to hold votes in our official Discord. They're going to, help us decide, pivotal decisions as we continue to grow and build. Paul, Joe, who's not here, and Paul and myself are going to continue to be the storytellers, and we're going to write, and we're going to come up with the sort of message that we keep pushing out. But as it, with any project, and especially NFT projects, right? I mean, they're only as good as the community that supports them. And so our primary goal right now is working on how do we kind of build this community up? How do we keep creating more value? And how do we keep identifying, those in the community that really want to be involved? And so that's, I'd say, number one on the list is growing that, pushing the boundaries there, and seeing how we can sort of continue to build on that support and that group of people around us to keep pushing us up. And then the second thing is, as Paul rightly said, I mean, we're very, very amateur writers, right? Like, this is our first book. I mean, we put our heart and souls into it, and we laughed our asses off creating it. But Paul, obviously, with the experience that he has, is going to be, the effect that'll have on the quality of our work as we move forward, I think is immeasurable, and it's going to be incredible. And, at the end of the day, our goal is we want to turn this into like a household name franchise, right? Like the Wizard Tim, that's the dream. That's why we started out creating it in the first place. And by having that sort of seasoned capability and experience behind us, turning it into something much more polished, as we kind of use Cardano as our sort of launching pad community, and we branch out into the larger mass media world, we have a product that we, not only me, Joe, and Paul can be really proud of pushing out, but the community that built up around us can push out and be proud of too. And I think that sort of growth trajectory is what I'm looking for.
I'd really like to interject something about that as well. My job coming in, I said to Tim and Joe immediately, I'm not correct. I'm not right in my edits here. I'm not just because I've done it for a really long time doesn't mean to say I'm correct. It means I'm telling you what I know so far, and I'm helping you with that experience. This is not my book. This is your book, right? Like, you made it. Like, we have a big reverence. I've had this for years for people who create. And Tim and Joe made this. I didn't make this. I'm trying to help them by giving them the experience that I've got. And I like doing this with creators. I will do this to the end of my life. I like finding creators and helping them just make it a bit more slick, or understand something about why comedy works. These are not things that are evident to you when you're first starting out. I didn't have a mentor, but I kind of did. I had Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman, right? That's not bad, because I read their scripts and I edited them. And so I worked with some of the best people. I was lucky that I had the creators of the Ninja Turtles right behind me, so when it came full circle and I was at the top of, Marvel or something, I wrote the origin of Wolverine for them. And I remember that year, it was so crazy, like things, and I'm like, I never lost confidence because I always believed that I could do it. And so when I bring that experience forward and I work with Tim and Joe or anybody else that I'll ever work with, I don't say to them, this is my way of making your book good, because that's bollocks, right? My least favorite thing in LA when I'm dealing with film industry is when someone says, if you do it my way, you're going to be a millionaire. If you do it your way, it sucks. That's never true. Never speak in absolutes. The fact is, what they made was already great. And I'm saying, I think it can be, molded and pushed us a little bit. So think of it as a director's cut, right? We're going to go in, we're going to tweak the language a little bit, get a little bit of the humor to work, maybe do the audiobook a little bit differently and just make it a bit more slick. And once we've done that, I believe the product will be something that they'll be even more excited about and may actually branch it out a little bit. And that's the goal, right? But my goal is not to change what they do, because I'm not the be all and end all of what they do. They are.
So in regards to the project and how it's evolving, where do you see it in 4 or 5 years' time, or even 10 years' time? Do you see movies? Do you see franchise games, merchandise and all that stuff? What's your grandiose vision of where this project will be?
It's a really good question. And I can tell you, when we were smoking weed, first coming up with this story, we weren't thinking about any of that. We were just laughing our asses off. I think first and foremost, we want to keep just having fun, right? Like, this is something that we started out to do, to laugh and make fun of each other with. And like, to be fair, like the Wizard, my name is Tim. And the reason this book started was I was blazed out of my mind, and I turned to Joe and I said, I think I'd make a pretty good wizard. And he, in turn, decided to write a story about exactly what kind of wizard I would be.
I was thinking maybe it's modeled off you. Maybe there's a name correlation there.
So with that being said, I'm happy, and I want to keep pushing this as far as I can take it, and I want to make sure we're having fun along the way. I have grand visions, and Joe has them too. We wish to God that it'll be like maybe in 5-10 years that we're just writing episodes of some Wizard Tim animated series, like Matt and Trey Stone are writing South Park, or like that's kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, I think what excites me more than the end result is like the journey that we're going to keep pushing forward and having fun creating on. So that's where my focus is. And I think that's where Joe's is as well. And we just want to keep pushing forward in that way.
The fact that you believe in the work that way is really the key to making it be successful. You can never predict if something will be a TV show. You have no idea, right? You don't know if these things will work forward that way. But there are certain things that you can do, right? You can always believe in what you like, right? Like you did it, you did it with honesty. And when I look back at my career, especially when I was working at Marvel a lot, all the things that they left me alone on, and I believed in, I just would write these quirky stories and stuff like that. Those are all the ones that people remember. And the ones where they said, hey, we got a crossover, you got to do a crossover with Captain America or something. I'm like, I look at them now and I'm like, they didn't mean anything, right? So because you believe in the work, that's what really ends up giving it the chance. It's authentic and it's real. And if you're just kind of pandering to people and trying to do something that crosses over or does a thing, it never works anyway. Will it be a TV show? Who can say? Everybody wants to make a TV show, right? But will it be better because you're authentic? Absolutely.
Now, in terms of funding this project and keeping you guys going, I don't know how many books you sold through the Book.io launch, but are you guys well funded enough to keep the project running, keep the creative juices flowing, and move and launch the next project?
Well, I'd say we're better funded than we were when we first started. So we sold 2,000 books at a price of 69 ADA each. And it was the way Book.io works with the authors, it's a 70-30 split. And then we had an additional split so when we first made the work, we actually worked with 12 different artists around the Cardano community, which was this really cool thing. So we worked with Cosmo from the Pendulum project, if you've seen that. And he's working on Dirtbirds 2.0. He's amazing. We worked with Jordi Lightau. We worked with Pixelato. We worked with like a bunch of really well-known artists around the space. And we basically said, listen, guys, we're writing this stupid story about this fat wizard, and nobody knows us on Cardano, but we love all of your work. Can you guys we're going to give you a chapter and just kind of tell you what it's about. Draw something in your own style. And so actually, when people buy the book, The Wizard Tim, and you can do it off JPEG Store now, when you go through and you read the book, at the beginning of each chapter, there's an individual work of art from each of one of these different artists preceding each of these different chapters. And so it's a cool like community book. And so we actually, through that process, we gave like 1 ADA per book sold to each of those artists. So that was the agreement that we went to. So that's another portion out. And so we still came out pretty well. And we're well funded in the sense that we're not really tucked in the project. From our perspective, we're mostly focused on writing and producing content like in this sort of medium. And that's not super expensive. I think we have a little bit of money that we can now play with and see how we want to grow with it more. But we're just going to, I guess, keep focusing forward. So in short, I think we're in a better position than we were when we had nothing. But now, it's not like we're rolling in ADA now and ready to like go shoot a Hollywood film. Like we're still going to keep writing and we still want to keep putting things out and we want to see how far we can take it. And I think it'll grow naturally from there.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I think I just looked on JPEG Store at the floor price. It's still quite affordable for anyone else that wants to be able to get access to the book and actually read through the storyline and have a look at all the artwork as well. So if anyone is interested, you can jump on JPEG Store, support the project. I'm assuming there's royalties in there as well. And then you'll be able to go through and check out all this artwork that was contributed by the various NFT artists throughout the Cardano community.
Yeah. And just a caveat on that too. If you're holding the ebook, when the audiobook technology becomes available on Book.io, that audiobook will be airdropped to you. And so there's like an additional NFT coming. So I told you when we first created this book, we hired a whole slew of voice actors. We edited it all together. I'm the narrator, and I also play Julie, and so I do a little voice acting myself. But it's this is like the true original like community creators edition audiobook, right? And it's going to be airdropped to anybody holding the book at some point. We still don't know when. It's basically like when the Book.io technology is available for the audiobooks. So that's like an additional utility, I guess, if you were to hold it now.
Having heard it already, and it already exists, right? So, we went through this in the early days of NFTs when the boom was going, and it would be like, I'm going to do this. People would say, they never did any of it. Like so many people pulled the rug on those ideas. This thing already exists. It's there. So it will happen once they pull that technology in.
Very, very cool. All right. I'll keep an eye out for that. Now, for anyone else that's interested in the project and wants to follow your progress or even contribute to the community, where should we go? What's the best place to engage with you guys?
Well, you can always learn more about the project on our website, which is wizardtim.com. And then the best place to follow along is either on Twitter, which is at wizardtimstory, or our Discord, which there's a link in the bio of our Twitter. And then I'd also highly suggest that you follow Paul as well, because, part of the reciprocal agreement of him helping us out is we want to help onboarding him into the community more. And he's going to be coming out with some incredible works. I know he mentioned Curiosity, which is the book he's going to be minting on Book.io later this year. I don't think we have an official date on it yet. So maybe once we get a little closer, we'll do some more interviews. But Paul, tell him where the best place to maybe follow you is too.
Follow me on my Paul Jenkins on Twitter at the moment, assuming that Twitter doesn't explode and become like Chernobyl. Follow me there. It's the easiest place to find me. Curiosity is completed, so it's just a matter of getting it sorted. What I want to do is do a few things that I think are really interesting in this space. I've done it before with Bitcoin Origins. I'd like to do it again. I think that the community engagement can work with things like, I want to do loads of covers. I'd love to do some that have input, where the NFT allows the holder of the NFT to give input into the composition of their own cover, so that people can help design their own ideas, and then we can deliver that artwork as part of that spectacular kind of one-on-one experience, right? There are so many things that I think that we can do. So I'm building out the program right now with the Book.io guys. I'm actually like the book is completed. And as far as the second one I want to do is completely different anyway, because Curiosity is a very quirky and sweet story. It's very much in the vein of Terry Pratchett or Douglas Adams. But the second novel I want to do is completely different. It's a murder mystery set in ancient London.
Ancient London, okay.
Yeah, it's actually when the wall is being built in ancient London, because the wall, London was only 1 mile around. So you had the Temple of Mithras in the middle, and you had this thing, and the wall was being built, and everything outside was countryside. And so the Romans had come, they sailed up, they'd found Londinium, but Camalodunum, which is Colchester, was actually the center of the country at the time for the Romans. And so in that thing, it's a Roman Decanus who's kind of like he's a kind of person who's a specialist, like a military policeman, who earns double pay, and he becomes one of the world's first forensic detectives by default. And there's a serial killer killing people in ancient London, and he's trying to find it out by following clues and so on. So it's a pretty cool book, but at its core, it's about mental health issues, and it's about PTSD. And so, you go from a quirky comedy to this like really dark thing, but I love anything. And I think you could make a great story, whether it be, romance, a comedy, anything. And I'm always interested in the next thing. So the idea of sort of having an audience that you build, you don't have to brand yourself as a horror writer. That's the point. You shouldn't just do comedy. you should brand yourself as a creator across lots of different ideas. And that's the kind of thing that I've always done. So I'm excited to kind of do this with Book.io.
Cool. I love the murder mystery genre as well. So I'll be definitely keeping an eye out for that one. So definitely follow you there, Paul. And anyone else here interested in what's coming out with the Wizard Tim project, follow all the links down below. So I'll make sure everything is in the show notes so that anyone that's interested can follow those links there. But gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode, explaining your journey, your experiences in your careers in general, which is absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing it with the community.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks for having us. We look forward to
links and everything in the show notes for you guys. So if you're interested in finding out more about the project, please check out those links. If you're wanting to grab a copy, you can grab a copy on jpeg.store. You can find the links down below as well. I've linked directly to the collection for you, so you don't have to search around or anything. It's all there directly in the show notes for you. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please give me that thumbs up, click subscribe, click the notification bell, and you'll hear more from me real soon. I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.